Hey there, everybody. We've got a whole mountain of articles here all about Ryan Cohen, the CEO of GameStop.
Oh, wow.
And it seems like you really want to get a deeper look into, this fascinating guy. So
You want to go beyond just the headlines with this one?
definitely.
He's kind of a puzzle, right? Because on one hand, you've got this image of him as this visionary entrepreneur, turning around a company that so many people thought was, on its last legs. But then on the other hand, he's attracted a lot of really strong opinions. So there's definitely more to the story here. So to help us unravel all of this, I've got an expert with me, someone who really knows how to break down the moves of business leaders. Welcome. This is going to be a wild ride, I think.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
When I was looking over all this stuff about Ryan Cohen,
Hmm.
what really hit me was that his whole journey, it really shows you how much the business world is changing, especially in this digital age. Yeah, it's like a whole new playbook out there. So let's start at the beginning. The Chewy story. Starting a company when you're barely out of your teens is impressive enough, but then to grow it so much that PetSmart scoops it up for over $3 billion in 2017.
Right.
I mean, that's just next level stuff.
3.35 billion.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. 3.35 billion. Were you surprised by that? That whole acquisition?
Oh, absolutely. It was a huge deal.
Yeah.
The biggest e-commerce acquisition at the time. And it really showed everyone that Cohen, not only could he spot a great opportunity, but he could build something incredibly valuable from it.
Exactly. He wasn't just chasing trends, he was creating them.
Hmm.
And then, just a few years later, boom, he steps down from Chewy and decides to focus on GameStop.
Yeah,
You know, not exactly what you'd expect from a rising star in e-commerce.
right.
What was your first thought? When Cohen made that big investment back in 2020 and grabbed almost 10% of the company.
I definitely raised an eyebrow. A lot of people saw GameStop as kind of a dinosaur,
Yeah.
struggling to keep up with the whole digital shift. But I think this move was classic Cohen. He
Sure.
goes against the grain, sees potential where others just see, a dead end.
Totally. And then things got really interesting because just a couple of weeks after he joins the board, in 2021, the stock explodes, like 1,500% increase.
Yeah, that was wild.
Crazy, right? That whole meme stock thing was insane.
Yeah.
Do you think he knew that was going to happen? That level of frenzy?
It's really hard to say, but the timing was definitely interesting. I mean, you had this perfect storm brewing with all these retail investors connecting on social media, this distrust of Wall Street.
Yeah.
And then Cohen shows up with this bold new vision for GameStop,
Yeah.
and suddenly the stock, it became a symbol for something bigger, like a way for everyday people to take on the establishment.
It was like this whole movement. Okay, so now he's in the game. What was his plan to turn things around? Because GameStop was losing money left and right, stores were closing, and everyone thought gaming was going totally online.
Yeah, it was a tough situation.
It seemed impossible.
He clearly had this vision of turning GameStop into a tech-focused retailer. And he moved fast. I mean, right away, he started cutting costs,
Yeah.
which is already showing up in the numbers. They're losing less money now. And he really pushed for accountability among the executives.
Oh,
He
interesting.
wanted to make sure they were invested in the company's success. So he pushed for things like stock ownership policies for the board members.
Makes sense. And then there's the whole thing about him not taking any salary as CEO or chair. I mean, how often do you see that?
Not very often.
It's a powerful statement.
It really is.
It shows how much he believes in GameStop's comeback.
Absolutely. He's putting his money where his mouth is, betting on the company's success. You just don't see that level of commitment from a lot of CEOs.
Right. And it definitely got the attention of investors and employees. But let's be real here. This guy is not your typical CEO.
Not at all.
He's got his own style.
Yeah.
He'd rather communicate through a platform like gmedd.com than talk to the mainstream media.
It's a very deliberate choice.
It's like he's building this air of mystery around himself.
There's definitely some of that. I think he's concerned about media bias against companies like GameStop, and he'd rather connect directly with the people who share his vision.
Yeah, makes sense. It's a strategy that really sets him apart.
So what does all of this tell us about Cohen as a leader?
Well, so far, we've seen that he's a visionary, great at spotting opportunities. He's bold, and he's not afraid to take risks, even when everyone else thinks he's crazy.
Yeah.
And he's completely committed to his vision, even when people doubt him.
It sounds like he's also someone who likes to do things his own way.
Oh, absolutely. And that can be both a good thing and a bad thing. It's definitely made him a controversial figure,
Yeah.
but it's also what makes him so fascinating. I agree. He's definitely someone to watch. So let's dive a little deeper into this unconventional style of his and what it means for the future of GameStop. Stay tuned.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't follow the usual playbook.
And the whole thing about him never going to college kind of adds to that image of him being a maverick. He's talked about how his dad, who ran a glassware company, was a big inspiration for him. It's like a classic American dream story,
Totally.
you know, the kid who learns from his dad and then builds something even bigger.
Yeah, it shows that he believes in learning by doing, taking risks, not being afraid to fail. That classic entrepreneurial spirit.
Exactly. Always
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, that whole controversy. With the Wells Fargo thing, back in 2018, he ended up paying almost $1 million
Yeah.
in penalties for violating the Hart-Scott-Rodino Act. For our listeners who aren't familiar with all the financial regulations, can you give us a quick breakdown of what happened?
Sure. The Hart-Scott-Rodino Act. It basically says that companies and individuals have to file with the government before they make any big acquisitions. It's meant to prevent monopolies and make sure there's fair competition. In Cohen's case, it seems like there were some procedural errors in how the acquisition was handled.
So it wasn't intentional.
Right. The authorities didn't find any evidence of him trying to do anything wrong. It seems like it was more of a technicality, overlooking some of the finer points of the regulations, which can be really complicated.
I can imagine. So it's a good reminder that even the most successful people
Yeah,
have to play by the rules.
definitely. Transparency and following the regulations are super important, especially for someone like Cohen.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about what he's actually doing with GameStop. We talked about his vision of making it a tech-focused retailer, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, one of his main things has been focusing on building a really strong e-commerce platform that's specifically for gamers. He wants to create what he calls a high-touch experience.
What does that mean?
It includes things like competitive pricing, a huge selection of games, fast shipping, and a big emphasis on community.
So he's taking some cues from the Chewy playbook,
Yeah, I think so.
focusing on customer experience
Yeah,
and building a loyal following.
exactly. He knows how important it is to create that sense of community, especially in the gaming world.
Right. And he's also tapping into that nostalgia factor.
Got it.
Because for a lot of people, GameStop holds a lot of memories.
Totally.
It's where they discovered new games,
Yeah.
connected with other gamers, just immersed themselves in that world.
He's definitely using that brand recognition and emotional connection to bring the company back to life. It's a smart move. Nostalgia is really powerful.
And let's not forget his social media game. He might avoid traditional media, but he's definitely active online, especially on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's like he's talking directly to the investors and customers who believe in his vision.
He understands how to communicate directly and build relationships with his audience. It lets him control the narrative and avoid the filters of the mainstream media.
It's a very modern approach to leadership. Okay, so considering everything we've talked about, what do you think the future holds for Cohen and GameStop? You know some of the sources you sent. Mentioned projections of GameStop becoming profitable in 2024, with earnings per share reaching 11 cents.
Yeah, that sounds promising.
It does.
It suggests that his strategies are starting to work, but it's not going to be easy.
What kind of challenges do you think he'll face?
Well, the gaming industry is incredibly competitive. It's constantly changing. To stay ahead, you have to be constantly innovating and adapting.
Right.
And then there's the whole question of whether GameStop can really shake off its image as a brick-and-mortar retailer
Yeah,
and fully embrace the digital future.
it's a big question.
It is.
So there's still a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, there's always uncertainty in business,
Yeah.
especially with someone like Cohen, who's not afraid to take risks and challenge the norms.
But that's what makes his story so interesting.
Totally.
It's like watching a high-stakes game unfold.
It's too early to say for sure if his vision for GameStop will completely come true,
Right.
but he's definitely shaken things up and started a conversation about the future of retail.
He's definitely not afraid to do things his own way. And it seems like that unconventional approach is actually producing some good results. What are some of the key things you've learned from studying Cohen's leadership style?
One of the biggest things for me is how important it is to be adaptable and innovative, especially in today's world where things are changing so fast. Cohen saw that GameStop needed to change, needed to embrace the digital world, and he wasn't afraid to make big moves.
Yeah.
He doesn't cling to the old ways. He's not afraid of change. He embraces it.
That fearlessness is pretty remarkable, especially when so many companies are afraid to try anything new.
It's like he's leading with conviction, even when it makes some people uncomfortable.
And he also understands That business isn't just about numbers and profits.
Right.
He's shown the power of being authentic and building community by connecting directly with gamers and understanding what they want. He's been able to create a lot of loyalty and excitement around the GameStop brand.
It's like he's creating a movement,
Yeah.
not just a company.
Exactly.
And he's also shown what can happen when you challenge the status quo. His willingness to question the way things are done and spec out against things he sees as unfair. It's resonated with a lot of people, especially those who feel like the system is rigged against them.
It's like he's tapped into this frustration
Yeah.
with the way things are
Yeah.
and offered a different vision,
It's inspiring.
even if you don't agree with all of his methods.
Absolutely. And that's what makes him so interesting to study. He's not afraid to challenge conventions and push the boundaries, whether it's his investments, his leadership style, or his vision for the future of retail.
It's interesting to think about how his background might have influenced his leadership style. Coming from a family business, maybe he's more in tune with the human side of things, the importance of building relationships and creating a sense of community.
That's a good point.
It's not just about profits and shareholders, it's about the people.
Yeah, it does seem like he brings a personal touch to his leadership.
And that authenticity really connects with people. He's not just some CEO in a fancy office making decisions without knowing what's happening on the ground.
Right.
He's out there talking to customers, listening to their feedback, and building a company that reflects their passions.
And that's powerful, especially nowadays when people are looking for brands that share their values.
So it's not just about selling video games anymore. It's about building a community,
Yeah.
a movement, a shared experience.
Exactly.
It's a totally different way of thinking about business.
And it'll be interesting to see how this approach develops as Cohen faces new challenges and opportunities.
I think it's safe to say that Ryan Cohen's story is far from over.
Oh, definitely not.
He's someone who grabs your attention,
For sure.
sparks debate, inspires admiration and criticism.
He's a very polarizing figure.
But one thing's for certain, he's leaving his mark on the business world.
Absolutely.
He's a reminder that even in this world of huge companies and crazy financial stuff, one person can still make a difference.
That's true.
It's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, that is.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Ryan Cohen, what are your final thoughts? What can our listeners take away from all of this?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of having a clear vision and the guts to go after it, even when everyone else thinks you're wrong. Cohen saw something in GameStop when most people had given up on it. And he's never wavered in his commitment to changing the company.
And he's not afraid to shake things up,
Not at all.
whether it's his investments, his leadership,
Yeah.
or even how he communicates. He's a disruptor for sure,
Yeah.
but he does it with purpose.
Exactly. It's not just about making money for him. He's trying to build something that matters, something that connects with people on a deeper level.
I think that's a lesson we can all apply, whether we're entrepreneurs, investors, or just trying to make a positive impact.
Definitely.
It reminds me that sometimes the biggest successes come from taking the path less traveled, from questioning everything and believing in something,
Yeah.
even when no one else does.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to see where that path takes Ryan Cohen and GameStop in the years to come.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of Ryan Cohen. Thanks for joining us. We love exploring these stories with you.
It's always a pleasure.
And remember, knowledge is power, especially in the world of business and investing.
Keep learning, keep asking questions, stay curious.
Until next time.